Hello, and we're right on time. Thank you, Suhel Seth, for joining us this evening, this pre New Year's Eve evening, on a very important discussion.
Thank you.
Suhail? Oh, great. You can hear me. I just want
Yeah,
to
I
make
can hear
sure.
you. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Stand up and dance?
No, because the last time round, your internet was such a letdown. I just want to make sure you
Yeah.
weren't frozen again. So, anyway, getting to the topic at hand, as you're aware, very recently there was an issue with an Indian manufactured cough syrup made out of Noida by a private pharmaceutical company, which allegedly is responsible for the death of I think it's about 14 to 18 children. I'm not sure of the exact number, but it's alleged that it has caused the death of these children. And as a result of which, Jairam Ramesh, who is the communication head for the Congress, went ahead and tweeted, taking a hit on Indian pharma, and then also kind of mocking Prime Minister Modi that you go on about Indian pharma, but this is the reality of it. Now, I find this very interesting timing, because for the simple reason that uh, we're at the same time reading reports of how Chinese are running and rushing after Indian drugs in the gray market because it's just not available in China. And through the years, 2 years of COVID, we've seen how India has helped countries with vaccines, has really stood by nations when it has been asked to, because of our pharma industry. And to see the Congress, go down the political line on something like this, what has happened is abhorrent. And that uh, and the government has taken action against that private firm, that manufacturing company of the drug maker, and they've seized their operations for now till an investigation is carried out. But then to tar the entire pharma industry so that you can make a point against Prime Minister Modi is going to impact brand India. So I wanted to talk to you, Suhail, about this, about how ill advised is a political response like the one that we saw from the Congress.
So I think you're absolutely right. The tragedy, Advaita, that's happening in India today is that politicians are willing to go all the way to denigrate, desecrate, create a disgusting narrative about their own country. The hatred for Narendra Modi is so visceral, it is so deep, it is so set that they really don't care. And they don't understand that in spewing such venom, you're actually destroying brand India and whatever it stands for. Let's take an example of the case that you just mentioned. Can you imagine what the opposition leaders in Gambia and wherever else there have been objections to these medicines? They will now pull out Jairam Ramesh's tweets and say even the Indian political firmament or political establishment believes that we are right. So we have destroyed brand India even before we've begun. Number one. Number two, these were the same jokers who abused Bharat Biotech and denigrated Bharat Biotech's capabilities of manufacturing the COVID vaccine. These are the people who didn't trust India Pharma then, they don't trust India Pharma now. These are the people who, in order to take cheap pot shots, are willing to sell their nation down the river. But that's one part of the narrative. The other part is any such incident does lead to an erosion of the brand's capabilities qua trust. People don't buy brands, they buy benefits. They choose brands in order for the benefits based on two things: experience and trust. If people don't like your brand or they don't trust your brand, they're not going to buy your brand. I've often said that people don't buy just the brand, they buy the benefits. For instance, you buy Colgate because you want white teeth. You don't buy Colgate because it happens to be a toothpaste. So, by
Yeah.
that logic, people are coming to India or buying Indian brands because they believe that Indian brands have the mix of both quality as well as capability. All said and done, the Serum Institute, Bharat Biotech, all of them, stood the course, and they stood well for India. They've done well for India. Indians have
Mhm.
done well standing by them. My whole point is, why do we constantly debase our own country? Why are we constantly negating the value that this country brings through its industry, through its businesses. My other point, Advaita, is Rahul Gandhi has been railing about, Sood Bood ki Sarkar, then about Adani Ambani. Point is, this man can't give an employment to, a horse if he had to. But yet, he's willing to find fault with people who are actually providing jobs. He's willing to debase them. What kind of motivation do you leave Indian industry with if every day the Indian industrial establishment is the target of your unfounded ire, unsubstantiated comments, and reckless to boot? So I'm beginning to worry. Does Jairam Ramesh not have a brain anymore, or has the Bharat Jodo Yatra actually diminished his grey cells? Because he's actually an intelligent person. But even Jairam Ramesh has fallen for this trap of making outlandishly stupid comments just so that he remains in the public domain. But then, of what use is this public domain? What kind of politicians are we creating in this country? Today, Narendra Modi's mother sadly passes away. You have an absolute idiot from the Samajwadi Party who
Yes.
puts a photograph of Akhilesh Yadav, who's tonsured his head, and of Narendra Modi and says, "Who's a real Hindu?" I mean, have we really come down to this? Is this what we want to be? Is this who we are? There is no doubt, Advaita, and you will bear me out. There's a lovely book called A Bottle of Lies, which
Mm-hmm.
was written on the Ranbaxy fiasco.
Correct.
There have been drug companies in India which have let India down, and they've been caught out in America. They've been caught out elsewhere. But you can't tar the entire pharma industry with the same
Absolutely.
brush. There are
Absolutely.
scientists who you're tarring. There are people who are working, long hours. There are people who are sacrificing everything they have. And you make one stupid comment and put their entire work to naught. So, what kind of nation do you want?
No, and here's what I find terrible, Suhail, is that we're at a point now where if you listen to global conversations, especially coming out of the United States, they are predicting in the year 2023 that a lot of production is going to move to India, and it's going to greatly boost our economy because people are not very comfortable, especially the Americans, with the idea of China being the factory of the world, especially post COVID and the kind of regime they have and the kind of policies and the opacity that they have and the human rights record. It's a very good opportunity for India to step into that role. Now, in light of that, why would you take such a direct hit? Why would you hit brand India in such a sort of insidious way? It's not even like just, a plain old comment. It's for me, I think it's very strategic. And if you are in charge of communications, you know exactly what you're communicating and how seriously you'll be taken as the former ruling party of this country, and being the principal opposition for whatever it's worth.
So, let me tell you something pretty dramatic and worthy of discussion. Of late, I'm seeing the politics of hatred has now taken on newer proportions. It is no longer hatred for Modi. It is also a hatred for Modi's idea of Modi's India. It's also a hatred for brand India as crafted by Modi. Today, if Modi says made in India should become real, it should have some teeth, it should be more global, it should inspire, involve, engage. These are the people who will say no. The reason is it is not, it's very William Shakespeare like. When Mark Antony asks Brutus, why did you stab Caesar? He said, it's not that I loved Caesar less, but I loved Rome more. In this case, it's not that they hate India less, but they hate Modi more. But what happens is, in that cauldron of hatred, this melting pot of hatred, you've mixed the elements so much that, I mean, it's a disaster. The opposition in India has begun to oppose for the sake of opposing. It cannot oppose on grounds of logic, on grounds of ideology, because many of them are in bed with each other despite sharp ideological differences, as we have seen. It is an opposition which is in disarray. You have one person in the opposition who's marching to nowhere. You have other people who are abusing him. Akhilesh Yadav yesterday says no one invited him to walk with Rahul Gandhi, as if A walk with Rahul Gandhi is like manna from heaven. I mean, this is the kind of opposition you have. Where has the opposition actually targeted Modi, and where they have, for instance, on issues like jobless growth, target him properly?
Yeah.
What happens is they make inane, very anti brand India statements, not realizing that they're pissing people off. People are getting upset. Now, you
Yes.
tell me, I, as a politically neutral person, when I see this, I begin to ask myself is this what politics is going to be? And is this what is going to win them an election? It won't. If you diss your own people day in and day out, if you only talk about the evils, the wrongs, the ills, people are not going to be happy. People look at leadership for solutions, whether it is leadership in the corporate world, whether it is leadership politically, whether it's leadership in the sports arena. People don't
Mm.
look for people who are always spewing venom, hate, and are emerging from a cauldron of bitterness. But that's what we've become. So someone needs to sit back and actually, within the Congress, introspect to say that these are the 10 things we disagree with Narendra Modi on qua policy. These are the 10 things we disagree with Narendra Modi on qua social behavior. Then attack him. Every day when India is being shamed, you can't add your muscle to the shame. You must add your muscle to prevent that shaming. You must add your muscle to prevent that degradation or that debasement. You cannot be someone who then stands and supports that debasement. You can't be a cheerleader for people who want to drag India down. Having said all of this, I'm not for a moment saying that we must replace logic with jingoism, because patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. We also have to be cognizant that in order to build a great brand out of brand India, that brand has to be responsible, it has to be accountable, and it has to be put to the test. If these medicines or if these drugs have harmed people, harmed children, we need to be accountable. We need to take people to task, and we need to publish, and we need to communicate the fact that the Indian government has taken this company to task. Mistakes are made everywhere. No company
Mm.
is perfect. No country is perfect. I mean, you had Chernobyl in Russia. You had multiple issues with industry failing America. You have an issue climate change in America. We've had our own Bhopal gas tragedy. It doesn't mean that because of one tragedy, you continue to rail against a country that you are part of, that has given you your political might, that has allowed you political sanction, and that creates political heft. I mean, apart from being ungrateful, you're just purely illogical. And that's
No,
my problem.
and the snideness of that comment, that, oh, and PM Modi and his government has been going on about India being the pharma of the world and blah blah blah. I mean, linking to such disparate things. In fact, our
Because
viewers
in
are
India,
pointing out here that the Uzbek government has been far more responsible about this issue, because they've released an official statement, and this, of course, our viewers are telling us, you can verify this on your own as well, but I'm quoting what they're saying now, is that the children died because they took an overdose of that medicine. I'm sure there'll be a further investigation, because children losing their lives is not something that any country would take, with sort of
you
a
tell
passing
me,
grace. And
would
even in
Narendra
India, that's not
Modi,
going to happen. But
would
to
Nar-
use this and twist it in this
exactly.
horrible way.
When the Bhopal gas tragedy happened, Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister. Okay, and when that tragedy happened in 1984, in the intervening nights of something in November or December, I can't remember the exact dates. Did the opposition at that time blame Rajiv Gandhi? Later, they blamed Rajiv Gandhi for allowing Warren Anderson a free pass. Then they
Yeah.
blamed Arjun Singh for being the interloper and being the conduit for Warren Anderson to escape accountability in India. But at that time, the role of the opposition and the government was to save as many lives.
Hmm.
Have we
Hmm.
become so insensitive, so deeply divisive, that we can't come together on any national issue? I mean, this is a cause that should concern the Congress as well. If there is a problem with our manufacturing capabilities, or if there is a problem with Indian capabilities qua pharma, government and opposition need to come together. They can't be fighting two different wars, because ultimately we are selling one brand. Now, he can't
Mhm.
say that Modi's government, this is a government that has been elected by or from the people. The whole logic of the Congress is almost as if Narendra Modi sneaked into power. He won two general elections, which these jokers lost. For
Exactly.
Jairam Ramesh to be stupid, insensitive, and crafty for no rhyme or reason, as you rightly said, snide. Snakes are snide. He can't be a snake in the grass. He has to say that, look, and I'm a great believer, with intellectual heft comes great responsibility and what I call measured speech. We are losing that. And one of the reasons why Rahul Gandhi makes these stupid statements, and there is no other way of defining them, is because he lacks the intellectual gravitas. When you have intellect backing you, there is a certain measured tone you apply. You then build on
Yes.
logic. You use words that are weighty and yet not divisive. You use
Mm.
language that is compelling without being abusive. Narayan Murthy famously said that you can disagree without being disagreeable. Today, we are seeing a level of disagreeability in Indian politics, which which finds no purpose, no relevance, and is non-productive. So, is this the kind of India the Congress wants? Tomorrow, if the balance of power shifts, do they want their opposition to behave the way they are behaving today? So, the
Yeah.
point I'm making, Advaita, is brand India is a sensitive issue because it is brand India's outreach both within India and outside. When national brands, when country brands talk to the outside world, they have to talk in unison. I'm not for a moment saying they must brush criticism under the carpet, but there's a difference between critique and criticism. There's a difference
Mm.
between being snide and being proactive. There's a difference between being regressive and progressive. There's a difference between only identifying problems and only helping find solutions. Today, we've become a nation that has a problem for every solution. How on
Yeah.
earth do you want this country to run? How on earth do you want people to believe in this country? How do you want people to then understand what this country is all about?
Do it's akin to a car crash. Like, for example, what happened with the unfortunate accident. He's fine and he's well and he's out of danger, Rishabh Pant, but it was in a Mercedes, I believe. It's like a Mercedes being involved in like a high profile crash or causing multiple deaths, and then going ahead and saying that, some German minister saying, oh, German cars are killing people across the world, and here
They'll
we
never
talk
say
about German cars. They'll never say
it.
it. They'll never ever say that. So I don't understand, where this is coming from. I really do
So
not.
I'll tell
I
you
fail
what's
to
happened.
understand.
As I've said on your program several times before, and I will repeat, there are two massive problems that are happening in India today, and we need to take cognizance of those. This is a government that has done sterling work, but is unarguably the worst in communication since independence. The
Yeah.
communication that the government has as a government is miserable, it is inept, it is non focused, it is non targeted, and it is non rebuttal. Their style of communication is aggression. Aggression, more often than not, when used to counter an argument, is never believed because then it's bluster instead of content. So that's one major problem that this government has. The irony, Advaita, is this government has some brilliantly individual communicators. They are individually brilliant, but as a collective, the government is weak, it's not need. The second problem is that the opposition is so much in disarray, it is so fragmented, it is so all over the place, it is so digressive in its nature that people are unable to come together on a particular issue to counter the government. So you have a situation where the government is talking on plane, these jokers are talking on two planes, and never the twain shall meet. Now my point is, should the government react to everything? No. But should the government react to things which affect brand India? Answer is yes. The government cannot keep silent when someone says that, look, drugs made or pharmaceuticals made in India are causing global deaths. The government has to react. Well, ultimately, the government is responsible for all the stuff that comes out of India. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm sure there's an export license, there's drug control approval, blah, blah, blah. Now, the problem, Advaita, is very unique. Modi's style of management is either he speaks or nothing is taken seriously. If he doesn't speak, the thing is brushed under the carpet. What happens is when he doesn't speak, that space of communication is then usurped by the opposition, who then make these unsubstantiated claims or allegations. With the result, then the government has to double up and say, oh, no, 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 actually, this is not a fact. You cannot
Hmm.
expect the prime minister to be the communicator in chief. If Modi has brought this upon himself, Modi will have a problem. Today, you don't have people who were comparable to Modi in terms of oratory, whether it was Sushma Swaraj, Arun Jaitley, and
Yeah.
before that, Pramod Mahajan. These were people who were great orators, great speakers, had logic by their side, and could therefore blunt an argument. Today, no
Hmm.
one has that. A, B, people are second guessing the prime minister. That if we say this, what will the prime minister say? The answer is not that. The question that they need to ask is, if we say this, what will the people say?
Suhail,
Ultimately, the
I
union
have a
cabinet is responsible to the people of India. It is not only responsible to just Narendra Damodar Das Modi.
Hmm. This is the other thing, Suhail, I wanted to check with you was, do you think that, television, nighttime television, and we both do a lot of these debates, they've turned into sort of these gladiatorial contests with, like, quick wit in 30 seconds, and unnecessarily there's a lot of showmanship. There's no real depth in the conversations that happen on those platforms. My question to you is that, now putting out a defense of the government, I know it's part of what the party does and needs to do, but do you think it's time that the government has government spokespersons vis-a-vis party spokespersons as well? Because, and the two should maybe not merge in terms of a communication style.
So I think it's a great question. Let's look at the American government structure. You have a spokesperson for the White House. You then have a spokesperson for the Department of Defense, Pentagon. You then have spokespersons for the Treasury. You have spokespersons for the CDC, blah, blah, blah. Here, depending on the day of the week and the time of day, one minister will brief the press, another Johnny will brief someone else. And the only constant spokesperson you have is the spokesperson designated by the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, what the hell does
Correct.
the Ministry of External Affairs know about, drugs or pharmaceuticals? The health minister is busy talking about advisories. Actually, Manvia should be coming out and, holding a press conference.
He's
And
actually good, huh? Manvia is
he's very
actually
good.
very,
And the
he's very
MEA
good.
guys should be with him. But
Hmm.
they shouldn't be opening their mouths. He's the guy in charge. So the point I'm making is, what the government lacks is not structured communication. They lack a structure per se. They also lack the ability to fashion and to carve strategically rebutted points of view. What happens is, when the Congress attacks the government, the
Hmm.
party reacts to the Congress.
Correct.
How? I mean, it's bizarre, it's stupid. If
Hmm.
Rahul Gandhi is attacking a government policy, the government needs to attack.
With
When
facts, with
Absolutely. So when the BJP,
narrative.
when the BJP believes that it is the government and the party, that's where they're making the mistake.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they are allowing the Rahul Gandhis and the Jairam Ramesh and the Akhilesh Yadavs and whoever else to create and fashion a narrative that is bereft of logic. Let's imagine I am Rahul Gandhi or Jairam Ramesh. Suppose
Hmm.
I'm saying that, look, I genuinely believe that the pharma industry is terrible, blah, 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 blah. There must be a reaction from Mansukh Mandavia as the minister saying, Mr. Ramesh, this is rubbish. This is how we have penetrated global industry through our pharma sector. This is our exports. These
Hmm.
are our imports in comparison for raw material or ingredients. And this is how the sector has grown year on year. Do we say that? No. What do we do?
Even if a
We turn
minister
it
doesn't, there
into
should be
we
a
turn it into a bloody
spokesperson,
mud fight. We turn it into a slugfest.
or
We
there
turn
should
it
be a spokesperson for that
whatever.
ministry.
I'm not
Maybe
saying
not the
Mandavia per
minister.
se. I'm saying a
Yeah.
person who understands that particular sector. because you don't also want an idiot who comes there and says obtuse things which you can't understand. The other thing
Hmm.
is, communication that is written or that is published stays longer than communication that is verbalized, which brings me back to the point that you rightly raised about late night television or television news. What has happened on television news is you are allowing people with disparate sets of views, with varying degrees of intellect, all coming together and not knowing what the hell is going on. So, but that is not my job or your job, which is why, and I don't mean to flatter you, which is why programs like these are now becoming more relevant, more exciting, and more appreciated, because people
Yeah.
can then recognize that, look, we are actually having a serious discussion without scoring brownie points or without using wit as the metaphor, where we've
Yeah.
replaced wit with fact. If in the process you have wit, it's fine. So, my point is, you cannot have a situation where when the Congress attacks the government, the BJP sets its army of trollers or army of, fact checkers and all that rubbish back at them. You cannot have a situation, Advaita, where facts are not rebutted,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
where obtuse statements are rebutted by vitriol from the other party, which in this case may be the
JP.
BJP.
Hmm.
So my point is, there needs to be some level of maturity, some level of gravitas, and immediate immediate rebuttal, so that you don't allow it to remain in the public domain. What is happening today is it's goebellion.
Hmm.
If you allow a fact, or not a fact, if you allow a statement to be perpetrated so many times, it seems to be the truth. And we cannot
Hmm.
have a situation where Rahul Gandhi is the proverbial Pied Piper, taking people into some levels of misery down a cliff, because we really don't know.
Actually, the Congress did this well, Suhail, but they, of course, did it for their own nefarious reasons, which was, trying to create this divide between the party and the government. But that was a way of escaping responsibility,
So I used to
and the
always say
motivation
that
was totally
the
different.
UPA was unique because Sonia Gandhi was in power, not in office. Manmohan Gandhi was in office, not in power.
Manmohan Singh was in office, not Manmohan
Not in
Gandhi.
power. So you had a brilliant situation. Each could shove the blame onto the other, and this is a nice cat and mouse game. But here,
Hmm.
what's happened is it's strange, and this is very very interesting. The party today is intertwined with Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi is the symbol and the wherewithal and the be all of the government. He's also the symbol and be all of the party. So today you have a situation where the Prime Minister's office has almost also become the Karyakarta's office, or the Sangcharlak, whatever it's called, or the head of the party. That distinction, and which was earlier said in Edwardian England, the separation between the church and the state no longer exists. So when you have lines of responsibility blurred, when you have accountability being muddled, and when you have no facts being rebutted with facts, or with no statements being rebutted with facts, you are living in cuckoo land. It's like a Western cowboy film where you roll out your gun and you fire and you hope that someone will die or someone will be accountable. It doesn't work this way. And the damage that you're causing to brand India globally is indescribable. Well, let me tell you, Advaita, having worked on brands all my life,
And it's
one piece,
unforgivable, Suhail.
no, and one piece of damage or one level of damage lingers like you and I can't imagine. Because
Right.
in today's world of social media, in today's world of instant justice being meted out by various trollers, these things remain in the public domain. People always say, पर 8 बच्चे तो मरे थे, पर ये तो बच्चे मरे थे. अरे भाई, अगर आप काउंटर नहीं करोगे, लोगों को क्या पता कि सच क्या है? So
Hmm.
replace replace this crafting of image with crafting of communication. And
But
unless and until you do that, there'll be a problem.
Suhail, in a realistic sense, and this is my final evening, I promised it would be only half an hour, so we'll wrap it up soon. But in a world where their pharma lobby is extremely powerful, right? And we remember what was happening with, the Pfizer vaccine in India, and the kind of commentary around it, and the push and the devaluation of the India made vaccine. You have a very, very powerful pharma lobby. Indian pharma is competing with that lobby. Indian generic drugs are available, accessible, much, much less expensive than what they are in the US. In fact, when Twitter took over, I mean, Elon Musk took over Twitter, Lilly, the pharmaceutical company, had a bit of a scandal because someone said insulin is free. And it was really a riff on the fact that insulin is so prohibitively expensive in the United States. But in India, of course, our medicines are easier to get, as well as less expensive. So in that context, dissing Indian pharma like this in that competitive world, can we view it from that prism as well?
Absolutely. Please go back into history and recent history. Y.K. Hamid of Cipla was reviled by the entire pharma lobby in the United States when he said we must be allowed to sell cancer drugs at affordable prices. What did you do when COVID hit the world? Africa
Hmm.
as a continent was left in the lurch. You didn't
Right.
allow accessibility because affordability was an issue. Is that fair? Is that really fair on us being called, as Modi rightly said, for the G20, one earth, one family, one future? Where does that leave people? So my point to you, Advaita, is that this level of damage, when you do it with great panache and without a care. But to undo it is extremely difficult, and it's complex. So it's not
Mm.
easy to turn that around. And finally, every country has barriers that they erect, commercial barriers, barriers of commerce. And to my mind, we have been far too pliant, whether it
Mm.
is in our FTAs, whether it is in our bilaterals. We've been far too pliant, and we've been far too open. And I think now we need to clamp down, because now we can talk. And you mentioned this, and this is a very important point that you mentioned again, to say that, oh, the world is pissed off with China, तो सब इंडिया आएंगे नहीं. आपको आमंत्रित करना पड़ेगा. You have to create an investment climate. You have to create investment attractiveness. You have to make India not the option to China, but India as an independent option. People
Mm.
are not playing, who's my friend today and who's my enemy tomorrow, qua China. We must be seen as an independent, attractive alternative, not just as an alternative, but as a destination for manufacturing. Only then will it work.
But Suhail, there has been a shift. For example, Warren Buffett, his company has divested 4 times in the last 6 months from BYD, which is an electric car manufacturer based out of China. So there are significant moves that are happening
Yeah, but
where
the point
it is
is,
as if
I'm not looking at
undeclared,
Warren Buffett's
Cold War.
disinvestment.
No, no, I'm just saying there's an undeclared Cold War between the US and China as of now.
But I'm
And
saying,
it's only going to
Advaita,
get worse.
then go proactive. Be
Yeah,
proactive in
yeah.
securing investment. Don't say that because they are pissed with China, they'll come to me. This is not like Sun Tzu's art of war, where you use a borrowed knife to kill your enemy. You have to then decide how to kill your enemy. You can't wait for things to happen. You can't say, हाँ भाई, because they're upset with China, हमारे पास तो आएंगे ही आएंगे. क्यों आएंगे आपके पास? There are still global options. There are still countries which are making themselves more attractive from an investment perspective, from a manufacturing perspective, from a social environment perspective. So these are all the points that we have to consider.
Hmm. Quick question from Rajinder. He wants to know, Rahul inviting Mehbooba Mufti, the one who he used against Modi. Your quick take.
Nothing. I have no take. I mean, Rahul Gandhi is, Alice in Wonderland would have said of him, if he was ever in school, that his lessons lesson from lesson to lesson. Every day he is opening a new era of absolute intellectual innocence. So, now commenting on Rahul Gandhi is also becoming tiresome, because when you comment on, foolish comments, then you yourself denigrate your own intellect and bring yourself to a level of someone stupid. I don't want to quote that off quoted quote, but I will. That, when you get into a debate with a fool, the fool enjoys himself. It's like, getting to a mud fight with a pig. The pig
Yeah.
enjoys himself. You're the only one who gets dirty. So, do you really want that?
Sohail, will you join politics? I
I
don't
will
think so.
certainly turn 60, but I won't join politics. I'm much happier being with Avi Singh and his cohorts on this program rather than being in parliament and getting only a minute to speak.
And having to sign attendance.
Correct.
Yeah, where will you travel? But thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back on Sunday with the Sunday Club. We'll do our year ender then. Suhail is going to be joining us and we'll try and get the other ones on board as well. But thank you once again for joining. Please do like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye bye.